I feel ill. Like, I don't feel good inside listening to him talk about how we're all so ugly and unhealthy and sad and depressed, and he's going to fix us. Lurie, aren't you grateful he's going to fix us?
Big Papa Trump. That's it. That's what he's there
Big
for. To be a protector,
Jesus.
protector. It's disgusting. Listen, we've spent a lot of time talking about what needs to happen in order to enshrine protections for women in the society, for people who have a uterus, for people who have reproductive organs that don't start with a peen and end with a nis. And so, like, it's been an important topic. And so when Kamala Harris recently said that she was willing to support the dismantling of the filibuster, which has been a real stumbling block in terms of getting substantive legislation passed. And I was explaining this to one of my dear loved ones just yesterday. They were like frustrated. They're like, I don't understand. Why is it more happening? And I was like, okay, well, you need 60 votes in the Senate. But why is it more happening? You need 60. And so I had to literally break it down to them. In order for something to happen, for legislation to get passed, that isn't about the budget and continuing resolutions, but substantive, meaningful legislation, you need the 217 votes in the Congress, in the House, and you have to have 60 votes in the Senate. And if you don't have 60 votes in the Senate, then your legislation can basically be filibustered. It will never move forward, and it certainly won't get voted into law. And so, Imani, the filibuster has been something you and I have talked about a lot because it has been used to prevent voting rights and to protect people from being able to exercise their vote. It has been used to prevent desegregation. It has been used to prevent the codification of Roe versus Wade within our federal legislation in a way that would not allow it to be undermined the way that the Supreme Court did. What did you think when Vice President Kamala Harris first said that she was willing to nuke the filibuster? What were your thoughts about how that might positively or not impact those of us who are fighting for reproductive justice?
I mean, it's frankly, it's the only way. It's the only
Mm.
way we're going to get anything done related to reproductive justice, not just abortion rights,
Huh.
not just contraception, but voting, right? I mean, how are people who want to have control over their own bodies supposed to vote in people who represent them and have that same point of view if they're being prevented from voting by Republican tactics? I mean, this is the end of Roe didn't just start with, the Tea Party explosion of abortion bills back in 2011. It started back with John Roberts working in the Reagan administration and trying to undermine the Voting Rights Act starting in the 80s. Because in order to strip people of our rights, we need to be prevented from voting for people who are going to uphold them. And all Republicans know this. And so that's why we've seen this devolution of rights ever since 2013, which is when Shelby v. Holder was decided, and the Voting Rights Act was essentially gutted, so that states that have a history of racism and poll taxes and and violence against voters, those states no longer have to go through the Department of Justice in order to pass laws that affect elections. So it's,
Wow.
I hate to sound like a stoner, but it's all connected, man. And it's like, it's so frustrating to me because one of the first things that anyone will say in response to we need to kill the filibuster is, well, what happens when Republicans get back in office? Because when
Right.
Republicans get
That's
back in office,
they've
then they'll
already
only
started
need
saying it.
50 votes. And it's
Right.
like, we can't we can't refuse to do things that are going to help people who are under siege right now because we're
Mm.
afraid what Republicans are going to do in the future. We already know Republicans are out of pocket. We already know that they will do whatever they need to do to maintain power, including overthrowing the government and staging a coup at the Capitol. So,
That
yes, Republicans will use any effort to kill the filibuster in their advantage should we allow them to gain power again, right? But if we can
mm.
kill the filibuster and we can do all of these things that are going to help people, that are going to restore the rights of people, then maybe we can keep Republicans from ever winning elections again because people will be so jazzed about all the rights that they have, right? Like, why don't people go to that point of view instead of well, we can't do anything. We have to play possum and hide under the bed because the Republicans are going to act crazy when they get back in office. They're already acting crazy. Democrats need to, and killing the filibuster isn't crazy. Democrats need to do it in order to help us keep our rights. And it's very frustrating that people don't seem
And
to understand this.
what I'm very convinced of, and maybe you see this a different way, is that even if the Democrats don't get rid of the filibuster, and again, folks, if you get rid of the filibuster, you're no longer trapped by this need for 60 votes. You can win with a simple majority. You could have 51 votes. And wow, think about all of the pieces of legislation we would have gotten passed if even in this 50-50 divided Senate with Vice President Kamala Harris casting the tie-breaking vote, think about all the legislation we would have gotten passed. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, perhaps. The John R. Lewis voting rights would have been enshrined with an even stronger, more vibrant and palatable pre-clearance provision. But Imani, if the Democrats don't get rid of the filibuster and the Republicans do take power, they're getting rid of the filibuster. I have no doubts that the Republicans will most definitely do what they can to get rid of the filibuster so that they can be able to pass legislation that they want to see, like a nationwide abortion ban, like all of the other things that they are talking about in Project 2025, the eradication of the administrative state. They will most definitely use the filibuster to do exactly that. Or am I missing something here? Is there something else they got up their sleeve and they're going to leave the filibuster wholly enshrined as this not Hail Mary, what is it? The golden calf on which they would sacrifice their power and potential political leadership?
No, you're not wrong at all. I mean, they will absolutely kill the filibuster. They will absolutely do whatever they need to do to usher in this theocratic, anti-democratic, borderline fascist government that they want to, force us all to live under, as outlined by Project 2025. So no, you're not wrong. And it bothers me that other people can't see that point of view, right? Because they're so scared about what Republicans are going to do. They don't realize that Republicans already have plans to do all of the things they need to do to make it so people like you and me have zero rights whatsoever. Women and people capable of becoming pregnant in this country have already been relegated to second-class citizenship, and we've been that way for 2 years. Right. Yeah. In order to pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, essentially, we need Democrats who are willing to work with us to help us to kill the filibuster, to get abortion rights legislation passed, to get voting rights legislation passed, to end this siege on trans people. This ridiculous feeling that, trans women are ruining sports. This idea that gender affirming care, which is, scientifically based, is somehow experimental and therefore is a level of healthcare that parents aren't allowed to provide for their own children. I mean, these are real issues that affect people's everyday lives. And so it's frustrating to me that we're not even willing to just to use all the tools that are in our toolbox. It's not even that Democrats would be doing something that is unusual. They would just be restoring democracy to the way it was supposed to be. I mean, the filibuster was an accident. It was an accident. It was a copy editor mistake made by Aaron Burr, for crying out loud, like dueling Aaron Burr. So, I mean, he X'd out a provision in the Senate rule book that would have allowed people to stop the filibuster and bring a bill to the floor for a vote. It was a mistake. And so when you have Joe Manchin out here saying, well, I was going to vote for Kamala Harris. Yeah, right. But now I'm not going to because, the filibuster is fundamentally democratic. It's like, no, it really isn't. That is false. It's a lie. So
and
I just need to spread the good word about the filibuster and about how we are living under a copy editing mistake by a man who thought it was a good idea to get into a duel and then died.
And let's sit there for just a minute, because this is something that Democrats, the left, yes, but even some moderate Democrats have long upheld as one of the primary blockages for us being able to get anything done. Going back to that 60-vote mandate in order to pass legislation, I was explaining again to this beloved loved one in my household, or in my family or the extended family, and they were like, well, why couldn't, when there was substantive legislation in front of the Senate, why couldn't they get any of the Republicans to agree? I'm like, have you met Republicans in office today? Like, there's not even if they believe that the legislation would do good, it would be political suicide for them to find 8 Republicans who would be willing to agree with or whatever it was, to get 10 Republicans. If we've got 50 Democrats, if we could get 10 Republicans to agree with Democrats to raise that level to 60, that's almost a political impossibility, because those Republicans would know that they will not have a future in the Republican Party. But when Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin are now criticizing Vice President Kamala Harris, It's one to be expected because they were, quite frankly, too. I felt like Republican plants. They were there just to uphold, even though they were there as Democrats. They were there and they acted in ways that essentially allowed them to prevent Democrats from actually ruling like a Democratic Party. Like that child tax credit, we could have kept that shit extended were it not for Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. The PPP, all the programs that were designed and put into place to help people could have been extended. The increased not workplace compensation, unemployment insurance. When you were getting unemployment from your state, that could have maintained its elevated level that we first saw during the pandemic had it not been for fake ass Democrats Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. But when they're the ones criticizing it, and this is something that a significant portion of the Democratic Party has been asking for, begging for, and Vice President Kamala Harris is saying, yeah, we're going to do that thing. What does that tell you about what's happening in the zeitgeist? Are you seeing in the Democratic, in the left, any response to this? Is there like, oh, thank God she's finally willing to do the thing that we've all wanted her to do for or wanted the Democrats to do for so long? Where is this conversation around this particular point of the filibuster headed right now?
Well, what I find interesting is I had actually forgotten that Joe Biden back in 2022, right after the reversal of Roe, said that he was willing to make an exception to the filibuster in order to codify Roe. Like that just fell out of my brain entirely. So when I first saw the news about Kamala Harris saying, yeah, I'm willing to kill the filibuster to codify Roe, I was like, finally, someone who's willing to say it. And then this morning, I said, oh, wait, no, Biden said that 2 years ago. But I think I get the feeling that Biden is being dragged along to some of these positions, right? Like
Kind of like he dragged Obama into supporting gay rights the way that he did. He got
kind of right, and I just think Kamala Harris is more serious about reproductive rights and reproductive justice. I think, given her work on Black maternal mortality, given the various freedom tours that she's done while she's vice president, going around talking to college kids and talking about abortion rights, saying the word abortion multiple times in one speech, which there was a whole website dedicated to asking Joe Biden to just use the word. So she is, I think, she's going to be more inclined to work really hard to use the power of the presidency to make this happen. I think Biden would have gone along with it if it could have gotten done, but I don't think that he was going to do a whole lot to make sure it got done. So I think the zeitgeist has changed because, we might have a Gen X president who's got I don't give a F attitude. We're going to get this done. I think there is an age difference. I think that there is a perspective difference between Harris and Biden. So and also, we're talking about it. We're in 2 years of living without these rights, right? 2 years. And in those 2 years, there was just a new report from Pregnancy Justice about the number of women and people capable of becoming pregnant who've been criminalized for having miscarriages. I mean, the devolution of our rights is rapid, and we're seeing that. We're seeing more people being criminalized. We're seeing more people being scared to go to the hospital because A, they might be left to bleed out, or B, they might actually say what happened to them, and oh, was it a miscarriage or was it an abortion? Every pregnancy has become a crime scene at this point. And so I think that,
oh man,
given Harris's sort of commitment to reproductive rights, I think we are going to see more out of her than we saw from Biden. And I hope that she can get other Democrats on board. I hope that Democrats will stop hiding in the shadows, being afraid of their own shadow, and actually do the thing that we need them to do. Because honestly, should Kamala Harris win, and should we go 4 years without any real substantive movement on the filibuster, on voting rights, on abortion rights, I'm not sure in 2028 you're going to have the same level of excitement among voters that we have now. We can't move into another election cycle with our hair on fire, because our hair has been on fire since 2012, right? And there are people, particularly people on the left, who feel like every 4 years we have to vote for the Democrats or else. And at a certain point, that or else is going to stop feeling as urgent because we're not getting the things that we need.
Right. You know, I want to circle back to something you said, which was that every pregnancy is a potential crime scene. And we spoke yesterday. We've been talking a lot about Amber Thurman, and Amari Marsh is a young sister out in South Carolina, who she had a miscarriage. She's a college student, junior year of college. She had a miscarriage in her junior year. She passes out in the bathroom, wakes up the next day in the hospital, and the popo's is in her hospital room. Like, she's talking to the police officer. They're taking reports. This sister was actually criminally prosecuted, or they went through the initial stages of prosecution. She spends over, was it 22 days incarcerated. She was then put on house arrest with an ankle monitor, and all because of her suspicion that she was charged with murder and homicide by child abuse. And then it's weird, Imani, because I've taken a little tiptoe into the TikTok. And so I technically had like a couple videos up on TikTok, and I posted something about this. I had done a live about this on Instagram, so I posted that there. And I have seen so many people who just are so wrongfully informed. I have people, I just saw a comment just go up right now. Oh, well, this was a crime scene because she drowned the baby in the toilet, and then all this stuff that just didn't happen. That just didn't happen, but they've added to the story. And I'm like, baby, this was in South Carolina. Do you actually believe if she had drowned that baby in the toilet, we would be talking about the fact that she's free now because the grand jury cleared her? Like, do we honestly believe that would happen? But this idea, this propensity of believing that women and people who are pregnant are wholesale just murdering babies, and then when you contrast that gross amount of misinformation with Donald Trump talking about he's gonna be our protector. You're depressed and you're sad. I'm gonna make you happy. You're feeling hysterical. I'm gonna be able to calm you down. It feels very much like you're the out of control, ovarian burdened ladies of the yester centuries, and here we are, the knights in white, who are gonna save you, the ones that we deem savable anyway. And just so long as you go along. And it when I hear him talk about I will be your protector, I'm gonna make it all better. It is, yes, gross and disgusting, but it also feels very cultish, particularly when you marry it with people who are just embracing and on Beyonce's internet just sharing just wrong, inaccurate, non-factual, wholesale shit that they just made up. And when you marry those two things together, yes, it feels like we're in the upside down. I don't know what we do about that politically, because this man is talking about holding up women as this fragile, weak, incapable group of the population, and they're just gentle, and we just need to surround them with my protective arms, and I'll be able to make it all right. What are we to make of this as a political strategy when it's married with a complete embrace of just utter false information?
I mean, as a political strategy, it dovetails very nicely with the overarching dominionist, theocratic, patriarchal, Christian evangelical sort of world that they want us to live in, right? Like, I mean, I've always hated the Handmaid's Tale references, and I think I've sort of come back around on that because it is very Handmaid's Tale-ish, right? Women, you don't need to work. We're going to close your bank accounts. All you need to do is just be fragile. We're going to protect you, and you just have to give birth. That's all you need to do. I mean, the idea that he is going to protect us when he takes credit for implementing, for putting the Supreme Court justices on the court who took the right, who for the first time in history took away a constitutional right. It's bizarre, but it does it highlights the ways in which Christianity and the trad wife, right? This new movement where women are pretending that they're super happy at home, taking care of the homestead. Meanwhile, then you read stories and articles about how they're really being abused and how all their dreams have been shattered. They've been given babies birthing babies since they were 17. Now they're 24 with 6 kids. It's very like Secret Lives of Mormon Wives kind of sort of energy that Trump is bringing, and it's creepy and it's scary, and it's moving more quickly towards the worldview that he wants and away from the worldview that people like you and I want. And so when you have someone saying that, what was her name? Marsh, I can't remember her first name, Amari Marsh, but that she somehow drowned her fetus and her baby in the toilet. So many people don't understand how pregnancy works. They don't understand how common miscarriages are, right? Something like 10 to 20% of confirmed pregnancies, according to Pregnancy Justice, the report that they issued yesterday, end in a loss. So that means that they're going to be looking at 10 to 20% of pregnancies and trying to figure out if you did something that caused your baby's death, when really doctors often don't know what causes a pregnancy demise. It's just part of nature. Some pregnancies are viable and are completed, and others aren't. And if we're going to say that every person who has a miscarriage needs to talk to the cops, then we're in real trouble. And also, I just need to say, and I need to say, I'm going to say this as much as I can. If you are a pregnant person and you have a miscarriage and you go to the hospital, just tell them you had a miscarriage. Don't tell them what you did. Don't tell them what you took. And if they try to bring cops into your hospital room, ask for a lawyer. Like, they try to get women and pregnant people when they're at their most vulnerable, right? This woman had just had a miscarriage. She woke up, didn't know where she was. She's in the hospital, and now she's got the police in her room probing her and asking her questions. It's ridiculous. It's scary how frequently healthcare workers, nurses, doctors will turn into snitches, will call cops on you when they're supposed to be on your side. So when I'm telling you, don't tell your healthcare workers what you did or what you took, it sounds counterintuitive, because of course you should be honest with your doctors, because they need to know all the information so they can provide you the right care. But frequently giving them all the information isn't going to provide you with care. It's going to provide you with a jail cell.
And we saw that with Amber Thurman, because one of the reasons that the Georgia doctors hesitated to help her for 20 hours as she's literally dying in front of them was because she let them know that she had taken mifepristone, the abortion drug, and she had almost completed the abortion, but not all the tissue expelled from the uterus, so that's what turned toxic. But once they learned that it wasn't spontaneous, it wasn't something that happened on its own, then it was like, oh, hands up, we can't help, because we are now afraid that our medical license are going to be at risk, this hospital is going to be at risk, and we're going to be facing a 10-year criminal mandated sentence because we have now criminalized providing the type of procedure that would have saved her life. And so, Imani, I got to be honest with you, you doing the Lord's work, because this is, we're in a moment right now where when we are seeing that 50% of white women are still planning to vote for Donald Trump, in spite of everything that we have come to understand about what this man plans to do, in spite of everything that we have learned about what the Republicans are pushing forward, this is, once again, the melanated black and brown people are going to have to save this damn nation, not for the nation, but for us, because I guarantee you, white women like Kate, we saw the difference between Kate Moss and Brittany Watts. Brittany Watts, black woman in Ohio, is arrested, has to face a grand jury for her miscarriage. Kate Moss was able to flee the state. Kate Cox, thank you. Kate Moss is like
she's a model from the 90s.
They're Gen X. We gonna do it.
We aged ourselves.
Thank you. She is essentially, she was allowed to escape the state, but the attorney general in the state of Texas did send letters to her medical professionals letting them know that if they provided this procedure for her, which they agreed was necessary to save her life. So everyone who's screaming about no, there's exceptions for the life of the mother. No, there's not, because that's up to interpretation. And frankly, when black women are already believed to be able to tolerate more pain, do you really think that medical professionals are going to see us in the throes of a miscarriage and not think that we did something criminal to induce it, particularly when we're living under the great protective arm of Donald Trump? I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing it at all. So yeah, Imani, God help us.
Yeah, God help us. We need no help, but we can't save ourselves, right? I mean, we kind of already knew that half of white women were going to vote for Trump. You know, there are probably some of the women in that half who just need to be told that their vote is private, that they should, if they're voting in the booth, they go in the booth alone. If they're voting by mail, vote by mail when your husband's at work. Like, it's a private, you can lie to your husband about who you're voting for, but you know, they're in danger too. And so many of them are sort of unwilling to realize that when you have an ectopic pregnancy, the treatment for that is an abortion. Like, you can't parse out abortions, good abortions, bad abortions. It's all abortion, and the Republicans have come for all of it.
They've come for all of it. Imani, I always appreciate you giving us some time. For people who want to follow you, and they always do, what's the best way for people to connect with you and to follow the work at Rewire News Group?
Yeah, you should follow Rewire News Group on all the social channels. We've got a great TikTok. Our TikTok content creator, they're just amazing. You can listen to my podcast. Huh?
You guys are back on TikTok, because there was a weird
we are back on TikTok. We got booted and we're back on. We have like 1.2 thousand followers. So please go follow us on TikTok so we get following up and help our content creator feel like they're doing work that people are seeing. You can follow me on TikTok. I have a TikTok. I post some stuff sometimes. And listen to my podcast, Boom Lawyer, wherever you get your podcasts.